Let's head on to Ukraine now as the capital Kyiv reels from in the aftermath of Russian drone attacks hitting key infrastructure and fueling fears the Russian president will pressure an ex-Soviet ally to join in a new offensive on Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin is in Belarus today along with his defense ministers. Fanning fears in Kyiv, he intends to pressure President Alexander Lukashenko to join in the offensive. Governor of the region surrounding Ukraine, Oleksiy Kuliba, says infrastructure and private houses have been damaged. 2 people were wounded. Attack, he says, caused fairly serious damage, and 3 areas in the region do not have power. A video by Reuters shows destruction in the village of Stary Badrachi, some 40 kilometers south of Kyiv. Emergency services are searching through rubble, looking for remains of a drone. The Ukrainian Air Force says its air defenses shot down 30 drones, the 3rd Russian air attack on the Ukrainian capital in 6 days, and the latest in a series of assaults since October that have targeted the Ukrainian power grid, causing blackouts amid sub-freezing temperatures. Russia's defense ministry says over the past 24 hours, its forces have shot down 4 US-made HARM anti-radiation missiles over the Belgorod region, which borders Ukraine. Well, let's take a closer look at what most Ukrainians woke up to this morning. A huge fire after a Russian strike on energy infrastructure in the capital, Kyiv. This footage from Reuters showed fire crews battling flames engulfing what appears to be electrical apparatus. Emergency services say a fire broke out after an early morning strike on a critical infrastructure site, and 43 personnel had been deployed. Moscow launched the kamikaze drone attack earlier today, hitting key infrastructure in and around Kyiv as President Vladimir Putin remains in Belarus, fueling fears he'll pressure his ex-Soviet ally to join a new offensive on Ukraine. Well, more damage in Ukraine. Another shelling by Russian forces damaged a local hospital in the city of Donetsk. Officials there report that 1 person had died as a result of injuries sustained in the hospital as a result of the shelling. Damage to the hospital's walls and windows could be seen from the street. The city of Donetsk, which has been under Russian control since 2014, has seen waves of shelling in recent weeks, for which local Russian-installed authorities have blamed Ukraine. Ukraine's Donetsk region has been an area of intense battle between the Russian and Ukrainian forces since Russia sent thousands of troops into Ukraine on February 24. More damage in Ukraine as the area of intense battle has been going on, with this hospital being affected by the fighting.
Можете его попросить, он начальник. Скорее всего.
Пациенты, извиняюсь.
Let's bring in the VOA's Anna Chendikova, who is in Kyiv. Anna, thanks for joining us today. And could you describe for us the extent of damage that has taken place in Kyiv as a result of the Russian drone strikes?
Good evening. So we basically are living through Friday's attacks, massive attack, and today overnight another massive attack. The one on Friday was mostly, so Russian forces mostly used missiles, tonight drones. What should be definitely said that the main target was energy infrastructure. Situation in the energy sector right now is very difficult. Well, it could be even called catastrophic. According to Ukrainian energy, main energy company, energy supplier, it is very difficult for the moment in terms of the amount of consumers of the electricity without electricity. So a lot of people at the moment remain without electricity. However, if we talk about this overnight attack, mostly it targeted the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, and for the moment, 3 districts of Kyiv are suffering with electricity outages. In general, the whole territory Kyiv and the Kyiv region is currently under electricity outages. In some areas, these outages are longer, in some areas shorter, and some districts have no electricity at all for the moment. But I should say that, well, I have electricity right now at my place, but I know that, my district was not under this main damage, but at least, but we understand that this would be, in order to balance the system, it would be changed. So it might be that outage would come to my district as well. So for the moment, and again, according to Ukrenergo, main Ukrainian energy supplier, the situation is very, very difficult, and especially considering that last attack was on Friday, also targeting energy infrastructure and also causing a lot of damages. And of course, today it was like additional wave, and it was not that much time for energy workers to repair the system, the grid from previous attack. However, situation is still under control, let's put it this way, because still there is no complete blackout in the country. But a lot of regions of Ukraine are currently under extraordinary outages and emergency outages, let's put it this way. So, Ukrainians just continue to, share electricity across the country in order to make sure that the system is balanced as much as it could be in these circumstances.
Yeah, I can understand that. And at some of the times we've spoken to you, you've talked about load shedding across Ukraine, and of course the emergency power outages just to minimize the damage caused by the Russian missiles. And then President Zelensky over the weekend talked about power being restored to some power stations. But let's talk about the attacks that happened today. Was Kyiv the only focus of these Russian drone strikes Monday morning?
It was the main focus, and what we see that 35 drones were spotted in the Ukrainian airspace, and 30 out of those 35 were destroyed by the air defense, some of them over the city of Kyiv, some of them over the Kyiv region, but they were targeting the city of Kyiv. And just above the city of Kyiv alone, there were 23 drones out of 35, and 18 were destroyed in the air. So those 5 drones that were not destroyed, they all hit energy infrastructure in the city of Kyiv in different districts. And also the debris of some of the drones that were destroyed by the air defense hit Kyiv region and the city of Kyiv. In Kyiv region, there are at least 9 private buildings, private houses damaged, and we know about 3 people injured. And the city of Kyiv, it was a damage of the road surface and also of the windows and of the facade of a couple of high-story buildings in 2 districts of the capital.
We did also mention earlier a hospital in Donetsk that was hit by a missile on Sunday. Have hospitals also been the focus? And I know we've been talking about, missile attacks on energy facilities, but this is pretty new, a hospital being hit in Donetsk. 1 person died in that incident on Sunday. What's the situation regarding healthcare in Ukraine throughout this war?
Well, a lot of hospitals, unfortunately, were targets for Russian forces in Ukraine. And of course, we heard a lot about Mariupol hospital, maternity hospital particularly. We heard a lot about the hospital in Kherson, in Kharkiv region. So in the liberated areas, we see that hospitals most everywhere are destroyed, either destroyed or heavily damaged. So unfortunately, medical infrastructure is also suffering, and right now we've seen some footage from the city of Bakhmut in the Donetsk region, one of the hottest spots currently at the front line in Ukraine. And we've seen the footage of hospital, basically of the hospital's basement in Bakhmut that continues to operate and to treat people, but it is also heavily damaged and hit, I think, a couple of times already by Russian forces. So for the moment, this is really a big issue, not only in the recently liberated areas, but also in the areas under Ukrainian control, but which are constantly under heavy Russian shelling. In general, so if we talk about Lviv, Dnipro, so those cities that only suffer from missile and drone strikes, situation with hospitals is okay. Of course, hospitals have to also adapt to these conditions, electricity conditions, and a lot of hospitals have generators that they use in order to be able to operate. And we also see a lot of stories and hear a lot of stories about operations which are taking place without electricity. So basically, doctors in the operation rooms use hand light and artificial light in order to be able to continue operation with non-stop while generator is restarting. So, for instance, on Friday, my personal experience, I was in the hospital and it was a generator working because after Friday's attack, also a lot of places in the city of Kyiv were without electricity. So basically, this is the way hospitals work. And of course, unfortunately, a lot of people struggle because of that, especially those patients who need non-stop medical support and non-stop support of certain medical technical equipment.
I can understand that, Anna. And just as a follow-up to that question, as people prepare, for more shellings and also stock up on supplies, they're also stocking up on first aid supplies as well, just the basic stuff, plasters, bandages, disinfectants, and so on, just in case.
Well, people are getting ready. I cannot say that, civilians are buying a lot of this kind of things. Well, they make sure that they have it for the first aid. In general, there is no problem in Ukraine with all these supplies. There are a lot of aid coming from international partners and also a lot of charity organizations working particularly on these supplies. Of course, Frontline needs more, always needs a lot, and maybe in some areas of the Frontline soldiers need more, but in general, there is no shortages of these things for the society, so there is no panic because of that, and pharmacies work regularly. So, and again, if we talk in general, if we talk about occupied territories and frontline areas, of course, situation is much more difficult. But still, humanitarian organizations make a lot of effort in order to ensure that these supplies are constant.
Anna, thanks again for the updates, and do stay safe.
Thank you.
We'll have more on the Russian invasion of Ukraine after the break. Welcome back, and we continue with our coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu was at the front lines of the war in Ukraine, supposedly over the weekend, inspecting troops taking part in what has been called Russia's military operation in the country. It's not clear when the visit took place, but it is believed it may have happened after President Vladimir Putin met with his country's top military advisors. A message on the Telegram messaging app says the Russian defense minister flew around the areas of deployment of troops and checked the advanced positions of Russian units in the zone of special military operation. A statement by the defense ministry says Mr. Shoigu spoke with troops on the front line and at a command post. However, it was not immediately clear when the visit took place or if Shoigu had visited Ukraine itself. On Saturday, President Vladimir Putin had sought proposals from his armed forces commanders on how they think Russia's military campaign in Ukraine should proceed. A series of defeats in 10 months of fighting resulting in Russian withdrawals from areas around the capital Kyiv and Ukraine's second city Kyiv, and most recently from the city of Kherson, have forced the Russian president to call up reservists and generated rare public criticism from military bloggers and some allies. In the video released on Saturday, President Putin presided at a meeting of around a dozen people at a circular table, flanked by Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov, both of whom have been heavily criticized by hawkish commentators. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry in a video said its high-precision weapons hit parts of Ukraine's military-industrial complex and energy and military administrative facilities on Friday. The Defense Ministry spokesperson said transportation of weapons and ammunition of foreign production was thwarted, and the Ukrainian plants producing weapons, military equipment and ammunition have been disabled. On Friday, Ukrainian officials said Russia fired more than 70 missiles at Ukraine in one of its biggest attacks since the start of the military operation, knocking out power in the second biggest city and forcing Kyiv to implement emergency blackouts nationwide. Ukrainian forces then shelled the Russian-controlled eastern city of Donetsk. 3 people were wounded in the attack. People could be seen later clearing rubble from debris-strewn houses that were damaged in the shelling. Drone video released on Sunday showed the battle raging in Ukraine's eastern city of Bakhmut on the front line of Russian invasion. Several explosions were seen in the video, with buildings destroyed or on fire. Bakhmut has become a symbol of the grinding warfare playing out along much of the eastern front, where enemy positions have rarely budged more than a few hundred meters in recent weeks. Back on the front lines, people brought groceries and clothes on the street as loud explosions sounded. Military experts say Bakhmut appears to be of little strategic value, but Russian forces, including mercenaries fighting for the Wagner Group, have in recent days intensified their bombardment there. Now, as leaders of 10 northern European countries declare their support for Ukraine against the Russian invasion, they're holding a meeting today of the UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force in Riga, Latvia. Speaking before the meeting, Dutch Defense Minister Kajsa Ollongren says that the support of 10 countries would be in place for as long as it takes. The JEF is configured to respond rapidly to crises in Northern Europe and is made up of Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden and the United Kingdom.
One thing to be considered, we must be wary of any talk of appeasement or a hastily declared peace, because at this point in time, any such talk would come to the direct advantage of Russia, where they could regroup in order to attack Ukraine more viciously. So it's Ukraine who should be telling us what they need, not us that should be saying anything to Ukraine.
We will not leave Ukraine in the cold, and we will continue our military, our humanitarian and our political support for as long as it takes.
Thank you for so powerfully highlighting the incredible humanitarian cost to your people due to the bombardment of civilian targets by Russia, particularly at this time of year. But thank you also for highlighting very practically the extra support that you need from all of us to ensure that you can continue to fight and reclaim the territory that is rightfully yours. You have our total support, and we will spend the rest of our time today talking about how best we can continue to support you and get you everything that you need. But it's a great privilege to have you with us as always. Thank you for talking so eloquently and powerfully, and leave it to us to then take that all forward and come back to you with the extra help that you need. Thank you for joining us.
The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak responding to President Volodymyr Zelensky's remarks earlier, asking leaders to supply a wide range of weapons systems to help end Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II. While Western allies led by the United States have been supporting Ukraine with funding, military training and weapons, Kyiv has said it still needs more to tip the balance in its 10-month-old campaign against Russia in Ukraine's favor. President Zelensky, in an apparent Karen Digger Berlin said there is no explanation why Ukraine is not supplied by German-made Leopard tanks and asked the Netherlands, whose forces use the tanks, to talk about the decision with partners. Germany is not part of the grouping and was not present at the Riga meeting. He expanded his appeal to specific countries, asking Norway to supply more of the Norway-made NASAM launchers and missiles, and Sweden for Swedish-produced Gripen fighter aircrafts, RBS-98 missiles and Archer artillery. Zelensky asked Denmark to transfer Caesar howitzers to Ukraine, Finland for more ammunition shells, Lithuania for NASAM, as well as Stinger missiles, Latvia for artillery, and Estonia for howitzers and ammunition. Meanwhile, a Turkish expert in international affairs, Deniz Kutlok, has blamed the United States for inflaming the Russian-Ukraine conflict, saying it enables itself to fill up itself from other countries' defense expenditures and maintain its unpopular world order. He believes the U.S. is the biggest beneficiary of the war and that the U.S. support of Ukraine is essentially to keep its hegemony and unipopular world order.
Mr. Biden and Mr. Blinken have managed to bring NATO together and let them decide that Russia will be re-recognized as new threat against which all defense expenditures will be renewed and increased. And the majority of defense production are coming from the US, therefore those money will be going to the US. Americans are happy about this. US likes to maintain this unipolar world order under its own superiority and doesn't like to see any contester to that position. Therefore, that objective of the US has got a test ground at this moment in the battlefield of, let's say, in Ukraine. But that big game didn't work. It worked just the opposite by looking at others coming because of the different reasons, and the multipolar world order will be much beneficial for the moderate states, ordinary people. Then the US has lost ground in the mindset of public opinion.